All right, let's dive right into the very heart of biology. It's chemistry. Today, we're exploring the chemical foundations of the cell. The actual molecules that make life happen. So, let's get right into it.
So here's what we've got lined up. First, we're going to tackle the big why, like why is this stuff so important? Then we'll actually take a little trip inside a cell, meet the three core ingredients of life, and after all that, we'll do a deep dive into one of them, carbohydrates.
All right, first things first, why on earth are we talking about chemistry in a biology explainer? It's a super common question, and honestly, it can get a little confusing.
I mean, you've probably been there. You're in a biology class, and suddenly the conversation shifts to aldehydes, ketones, and all these molecular bonds. And you're thinking, wait, did I accidentally walk into organic chemistry? So what's the deal here? Is this about life, or is it just chemicals?
Well, here's the short answer. Biology is applied organic chemistry. It's that simple. Think about it. Living things, from the tiniest cell to you and me, were all built from these organic molecules. So if you really want to understand biology, you have to get the chemistry that makes it all tick. They're basically two sides of the very same coin. You know what? To really get a feel for this, let's take a little tour. Imagine we can shrink ourselves down, like way down, and travel inside a cell to see all this chemistry happening in real time. Okay, so we're approaching the cell, and the very first thing we bump into is its gatekeeper, the cell membrane. This thing is the bouncer, deciding everything that gets in and everything that gets kicked out. So the big question is, what is this gatekeeper actually made of? And bam! The second we look closely at this membrane, we find the stars of our show. The wall itself is mostly this double layer of lipids, but it's not just a wall. It's studded with all these proteins that act like little tunnels or channels. You got cholesterol in there, keeping it all flexible, and even a sugary coating made of, you guessed it, carbohydrates. Okay, let's set up a quick scenario. Imagine this cell is working overtime, really burning through energy. And it suddenly realizes, hey, I need to get way more sodium and potassium in and out of here, like right now. The protein channels it has just can't keep up. So, what does it do?
It builds a new one from scratch. An urgent message gets sent to the ribosome. Think of it as the cell's 3D printing factory. The ribosome just grabs a bunch of individual amino acids that are floating around, links them together into this long chain, and then, this is the amazing part, that chain folds itself into a perfect, specific 3D shape. And just like that, you have a brand new, fully functional protein channel. It's a perfect example of the cell as this incredibly dynamic chemical factory.
So that little trip just showed us a few of the key players in action, right? Now let's kind of zoom back out and properly introduce the three main types of biomolecules that are responsible for building and running the entire cell. Okay, meet the big three. First up, proteins. We just saw them in action building those channels. They're basically the cell's tiny machines and construction workers, doing almost all the physical labor. Then you have lipids. They're the ones forming the cell membrane, creating barriers, and they're also great for long-term energy storage. And finally, carbohydrates. And we're going to spend a lot of time on these today. They are all about quick energy and providing structure. Seriously, almost everything a cell is and does comes down to these three molecules. All right, let's zoom in on that last group. It's time to really dig into life's number one fuel source, carbohydrates. The name carbohydrate actually gives the whole game away. Carbo, that's for carbon, and hydrate, well, that means water. So a carbohydrate is basically just carbon plus water repeated over and over again. It even gives us this super simple general formula you can see here. So check this out. What happens if we just plug in the number 6 for N in that formula? We get C6H12O6. And what's that? It's glucose, the simple sugar that is literally the fuel for so much of life on this planet. It's that simple. Kind of cool, right? But of course, it's not that simple. Here's where things get really interesting. That one formula, C6H12O6, it doesn't just stand for one single molecule. Turns out not all sugars are created equal. Just look at glucose and fructose. They have the exact same chemical formula. Both have 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, and 6 oxygens. But they are totally different molecules. We call them isomers. It's exactly like having the same pile of Lego bricks, but using them to build two completely different models. And that small difference in structure, it changes everything. It changes how they taste, how our bodies process them, everything. So what happens when these simple little sugars want to link up and form something bigger? Well, it's funny. Chemistry's a lot like life. Sometimes to form a new relationship, both sides have to give something up. So when a glucose and a fructose molecule want to join together, they can't just mush together. To create that connection, that bond, they have to release a water molecule. One gives up a bit, the other gives up a bit, and through that little sacrifice, they form a brand new, very sweet relationship called sucrose. And you know what sucrose is? It's just the table sugar you put in your coffee.
And that special chemical handshake they make, that connection, it has a name. It's called a glycosidic bond. And this bond is absolutely crucial because it's the key to building all the bigger, more complex carbohydrates from these simple sugar building blocks.
Okay, so we know what they are, we know how they're built. Let's finish up by talking about what these molecules actually do. Why do they matter so much?
I mean, the diversity here is just wild. On one hand, you have carbohydrates that are crystalline, like the sugar in a sugar bowl. On the other, you have ones that are super tough and fibrous, like the cellulose that makes wood, well, woody. Some are incredibly sweet, but others, like the starch in rice or potatoes, have no taste at all. And their jobs are just as varied. They're the go-to source for quick energy in pretty much every cell. They provide the tough, rigid structure for plants. And animals, they're stored as something called glycogen for a rainy day. And get this, they're even a critical part of the backbone of our DNA and RNA. And they even help lubricate our joints.
And just to put their importance into perspective, check out this number. If you take any plant and completely dry it out, get rid of all the water, a mind-boggling 50 to 80% of what's left is just carbohydrates. That's how fundamental these things are to life on Earth. So when you boil it all down, every single living cell is this incredible, bustling chemical factory. It's constantly building, breaking, and rearranging molecules like carbohydrates just to power itself and build itself. Which really leaves us with one final big question. Is life even possible without this amazing cellular chemical factory?